So we are recording here on St. Patty's Day.
You bring the corned beef?
I did not. Marty had some though.
I did indeed. I'm ready to sing Danny Boy.
That'll be good.
Well, we have 10 participants so far. I expect it to grow.
Yeah. This will also be available on video on demand on our website, so many others tune in after the fact.
I get 2 minutes, Marty.
Yeah, 2 minutes. The 2-minute warning. I've got 1 minute now.
Okay. Well, Marty, I'm going to give you the cue. You're on the
Okay.
air.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our March meeting of the SMPTE New England section. I'm Marty Feldman, the section chair. And I also, before I forget, I want to thank Jerry Whitaker for helping to put together this meeting. And of course, I want to thank Luke Fay, who is the presenter tonight, who unfortunately you can't see at the moment, but you will see his visuals. He is having a problem with the camera. And I want to point out it is not a Sony camera because Luke is an executive at Sony. And Luke is also the ATSC chairman for TG3S32, which he'll have to tell you what that is. And also the vice chair for TG3. And does everybody remember what over-the-air television is? That's what we're going to talk
heard about it. I never saw it.
Where that's going, and it is going. It's going to be great, and probably long overdue as well. Luke is he's actually senior technical standards manager for Sony home entertainment and sound products, and so that's why he's involved with the television side. And he has 13 patents to his credit in digital processing, signal processing. And we're really, really glad to have him with us tonight. I wish we could see him, but maybe his camera will get fixed over the course of the hour. I also want to thank Paul Beck, of course, our treasurer, for making everything happen in the section, and for all of our managers who have contributed also to everything we do. So we'd love to have you participate. If you have any ideas for meetings or anything like that, we're always open to, we do about 10 meetings a year. And although we can add them, there's many, many subjects. I've been watching this week, the NAB is actually having technical seminars this week. And I think it goes into next week, which have been very interesting. They're almost like our meetings. That would be interesting more often, but it has been quite interesting. They've had one with RTS and some other of the major companies in our industry. So if you might want to take a look at that, go up on NAB on their website, and it's free. So all you have to do is sign up. And before we get started, I would like to plug our next two meetings. On April 21st, we're going to have Mark Shubin. Probably all of you know Mark because Mark is the technical director of the Metropolitan Opera in New York, and also was the director of Sesame Street, and is an overall polymath on many subjects in our industry. And it should be a great meeting. That's going to be on April 21st, and he calls it Fandom of the Opera. As you know, the Met broadcasts their operas around the world. And he'll be talking about that, and he'll be talking about how opera also played a major role in the development of television, believe it or not. So that should be a great meeting. And then on May 19th, we're going to have Carl Kuhn, who's a SMPTE governor, and also has been with Tektronix for years, but now Tektronix is combined with Telestream. And the subject will be SDI to IP, very critical subject these days. And he is a great presenter. Should be a very good meeting. Again, that's May 19th. So now I want to turn the meeting over to Luke. And again, you can't see him, but you'll see his visuals. And you know what they say about television without pictures is radio. But here we go. It's all yours, Luke.
Thanks, Marty. And it's great to be invited to this New England section of SMPTE here. Always excited to show what ATSC has been up to and make people dream. One of the things that ATSC 3 has been doing is enabling people to evolve, and it allows technology to grow and allow broadcast to keep pace with new technologies. So with that as an intro, let me get started here. Get the right buttons going here. Okay.
My gosh, we can see you now.
Hey, all right.
How about that?
There we go. So, a long time ago, there was ATSC 1.0 standard that was brand spanking new. It was 1995. And at that time, you can see the devices that we had. You know, a whopping huge big screen TV of 13-inch. We had the PC, as you see there to the right. But in ATSC 1.0, it was digital TV broadcasting and in high definition. We have multicasting capabilities. We had this great surround sound of 5.1. And we had electronic program guides to help the consumers out, closed captioning, and we thought we had extensibility beyond our years. But at that time, it was revolutionary, and now here we are over 25 years later. And we have the TVs now with apps, and it's a combination of the online and broadcast content. We have Chrome fling devices where you can send a picture to a TV from different phones or a PC or whatnot. They call it Chromecast. We've got tablets, and we even have iWatches now. So technology continues to evolve, and so does ATSC 3. One of the things that we've been monitoring is the over-the-air viewership is continuing to grow. There was a time there where cable was really strong, and it continues to be strong. It's over 60%, but it was extremely strong some years ago. But recently, people are starting to cut the cord a little bit, and the viewership from broadcast only is increasing. But over-the-top services or broadband services, they also continue to grow. And one of the key attributes that is really gaining strength right now is mobile viewing. So people in the airports and whatnot continue to watch their phones. Continue to watch their phones and whatnot. And so the capability to watch content on your phone is very compelling and desirable. The on-demand is always assumed. People want to watch content when they want to, not when they're told to. And digital advertising is increasingly powerful. If an ad is of interest to somebody, then they will continue to keep interest and watch the content. So ability to curtail advertising is big. And consumers have become this app-centric kind of mentality. So Netflix is big, and Hulu, and HBO, and Peacock, and all these other apps and Sling, are coming online and becoming popular. People are getting used to that, and one of the reasons is content. They always want to get to their content. So with this kind of migration of the consumer, we have to keep pace. And what ATSC3 has done is we've added additional capacity. So in HDTV today, or ATSC 1.0, we have about 19.392, a little over 19 megabits per second payload capacity. And that assumes a signal strength of around 15 dB SNR. And with that same signal strength of 15 dB SNR, we can have about 25 megabits per second capacity now. So with that increased capacity, we're more efficient, and we can add more data. And that data can be whatever it wants to be. It can be media, it could be files, it could be whatever a broadcaster wants. In that capacity, we have the ability to offer a range of quality of reception. So you can send a program out there and you say, okay, I want this to be robust. I want it to address mobile cell phones. I want it to go to cars. I want it to be received deep indoors or parking garages or wherever. You can do that. And you can set up simultaneous delivery of services for stationary TVs alone. So there's a wide range of operating points that can be simultaneously sent, allowing a broadcaster to really have control and curtail their broadcast for their market. Broadcasters are always in tune with what their consumers and what their people have interest in, and what is interesting to them, and where they monitoring their content. One of the key aspects of ATSC3 is the ability to have a hybrid, it says hybrid OTA and OTT, that means hybrid over the air and over the top, so it's broadcast broadband. And the ability to do that is really based on the decision we made very early on to use an all IP based system. The protocol stack is entirely IP, and it allows a broadcaster to evolve with technology and keep pace with the internet as it advances on. So it's one of the key things that we chose early on. What that allows a broadcaster to do is enhance consumer experience improvement. So not only is video and audio quality improved, and by that I mean improved basically means we're using an HEVC video codec, and we're using Dolby AC4 audio, at least for the North American region. And with those improved codecs, we can get sharper images and better audio. And improved accessibility. The captions that come along for ATSC3 are IMSC1 based. That's the latest version, offering a whole new set of tools that we can use for captions. And interactivity, like I was trying to explain, the combination of distribution paths of broadcast and broadband allows interactivity to any consumer to feed back what they're thinking, or if they have a vote ongoing, consumers can engage with the content better. And of course we have advanced emergency alerting. Broadcasters have always been mandated to support emergency alert service, and now there's an ability to even go beyond that and supply evacuation routes, or here's the location of the emergency and whatnot. So I'll get a little more into that a little later on. Lastly, there's new business models. The ATSC3 protocol stack delivers data, ones and zeros. That's it. And those ones and zeros can be anything a broadcaster wants. It could be media, non-real-time files, specialized services, pay-per-view, advanced advertising, entirely data casting. If they want to rent out their spectrum and say, I have 2 megabits per second that is just sitting around doing nothing, I can rent it out to some businesses who want to advertise. That's totally possible. So there's a whole new slew of business models, and I encourage everyone to dream. Think what you can do if you have the ability to have one-to-many broadcast on your content or what you want to do. This is what ATSC 3 enables. So our documents are quite extensive. We have all the topics up on the top here, RF transmission, IP delivery, and emergency alerting, watermarks, companion devices. All those topics are on the top, have now been described in the documents that are shown on the bottom. I've labeled the ATSC standard number with an A/3 something. In the middle ground there's A341, A342, A343, but what does that mean? I've tried to label each one of those. It's like video standard, audio standard, captions, etc. So there's about 19 standards listed here, and each one is separated by the top up there on the top. I was fighting this slide for the longest time because I don't like brown as a color, but here it is. I failed to find a way to correct it. Our protocol stack details will be shown a little later on, but what I'm trying to show here is that there are a few key layers that are trying to be signaled here. At the bottom, if we start at the bottom there with black, it's system discovery. And this is a very key attribute of ATSC3 where we signal the a priori information, meaning what's the sampling frequency, what's the signal bandwidth, if there's emergency information contained in this or whatnot. It's the a priori information to get going. And that signaling then tells a demodulator where to go to pick up the frames for its information, where the payload is located. That's in the transmission there. As we're going up the stack here, you can see a black arrow with a sign of signaling there on the side for each individual layer. And the transmission itself is OFDM based, orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. It allows for separate quality of services and payload in physical layer pipes. One of the cool multiplexing options we have is layered division multiplexing, where superposition of power comes into play with constellations. Looks kind of fun. And we have channel acquisition and immediate stuff coming on here for the physical layer. I'll get to that in a second. But like I said, the protocol is IP based. So in the stack we have UDP and IP. We have two separate encapsulators. We have a root and a dash combination in MMT, and they're all using the ISO BMFF file format. And going up the stack, we in the presentation layer we have the video, audio, closed captions, and whatever else to signal the ultra high definition video and multicast and immersive audio. And on top here we have applications where we can engage with some graphics and some broadcaster applications to engage consumers. So it's about maximum flexibility. Every layer is signaled and trying to allow the broadcaster to do what they want and give them as much freedom as they can to engage with their market with minimal regulation. Oops, wrong one. There we go. So starting off at the bottom, the physical layer, we call it a bootstrap. But basically it is a signal that is extremely robust that provides the a priori information. And one of the things this bootstrap signals is time to next frame. So it allows people to play, try things out without interfering with the current over-the-air system of ATSC-3. So we can evolve beyond ATSC-3 without messing up where we have today. And these bootstraps basically announce the technology in each frame, and it's a hierarchical signaling. Basically, if you see the graphic on the right, you'll see this time and frequency plot. And you'll see this bootstrap signal kind of in the middle. Those bootstrap signals are 4.5 megahertz wide, and they operate at almost around minus 12 dB SNR. I mean, it's extremely robust. If you're familiar with GPS, it kind of works like that, where there's a single code out there. It's basically a Zadov-Chu sequence riding on top of a PN, Zadov-Chu sequence tone riding with a known PN sequence that just shifts the phase of that PN, and that shifting of the phase is where information lies. But that 4.5 megahertz tone operates extremely well, down to minus 12 dB. I mean, I say receivable at below minus 6 dB. We've tested it at minus 12. It's a very robust. But like I said, it gives you the preamble selection, sampling frequency, channel bandwidth, everything a demodulator needs to get going. And it basically says, here is your L1 basic signaling. We call that a preamble. And in there is basic information for the next hierarchy of signaling, which is L1 detail. It basically gives what's the FFT size, what's a guard interval, what kind of scattered pilots patterns do we have, etc., etc. And all of that is followed by the payload of the data itself. The physical layer, as we move up the chain here, this is the 5 coming out, and on the left we have the input of ATSC link layer packets. It's called ALP. That's at the bottom left in blue, I think. And on top of that is a dotted arrow. It says QoS. That's quality of service. That's basically control. So we have our data coming in on the bottom arrow, and we have the control saying this data I want to have be highly protected, and the next ALP packet, that can be in a high capacity mode. And the sections or the functions of the physical layer are outlined in these blocks from left to right. So on the bottom row, if you will, I have a baseband framer, a scrambler, a forward air correction, bit interleaver, mapper. That's layer division, multiplexing, the optional MIMO insertion, a time interleaver, a framer, frequency interleaver, some addition of pilot tones, the ability to signal a multiple input, single output code to aid the modulators if they have one antenna, but the broadcaster has multiple transmissions. They can do that. Finally, the last stages of inverse FFT, peak to average power ratio, PAPR, and insertion of the guard interval out to the DDA and out to the exciter. In the top purple boxes, you have the control for all of this. So you have a formatting control, the bit interleave coded modulation control, BICM, frequency interleaver being on, off, preamble, etc., being inserted there. So at a high level, these are the functions of the physical layer. I'll go through this presentation, but if you guys have any questions about the PHY, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I've done for many, many years. So I'm probably able to answer all your questions on the PHY. And I hope to answer them as we go up the stack here, but this is where I cut my teeth, as it were. So in transmission, today we have ATSC 1.0, 1 bit rate, And one coverage area of 15 dB CNR, and the service flexibility is HDTV and multicasting of diginets and some data. That's where we are today. For ATSC-3, it's all about more bits per hertz. Let's get more efficient with what we do, and we're getting very close to the Shannon limit. We have the ability for flexible bit rates, some coverage area choices, and multiple simultaneous bit pipes. And we have the optional on-air or on-channel repeaters, which basically can fill in gaps, but that's basically what I call an SFN, single frequency network. And what that allows us to do is to have a single tower, and let's say we want to deliver 36 megabits per second. Well, how far is that going to go? To do 36 megabits per second is going to require a very light code protection on a very high modulation code rate. So maybe 1024 QAM or high 256 QAM with a low code rate. And in those areas, you're going to require about 30 dB SNR or CNR. So with a higher receive signal strength requirement, you're not going to get that far. But we can do it. Or we can say, no. We're not going to have the high capacity payload. Let's target a little something reasonable of 27 megabits per second. That 27 comes close to around 15 dB CNR, so that's a little bit more like it. Or we can say, no. Let's try something lower. Let's get down to 18 megabits per second, or even let's try 9 and even extend further beyond the transmitter. So we have this ability to choose like this. And here's the big thing, we can do it all at the same time. We can dedicate a pipe to run at 6 megabits per second, and we can dedicate a pipe to run at 2 and 4 and 25 megabits per second, all at the same time. And the 25 megabits per second pipe can be received by a Yagi antenna that's meant for stationary devices, or we can set up a pipe that'll run on deep indoor reception with the rabbit ears, or we can have it on the cell phones running with the 2 megabits per second. It just depends on what we want to do. And of course, there's repeaters for an SFN or gap phone. So I don't know if you're familiar with a Shannon limit. Sometimes I feel I'm preaching to the choir. But basically, here is where ATSC standards sit relative to their efficiency. So the blue line is the Shannon limit, and it runs from -10 to over 30 dB SNR. And I've plotted in green where ATSC 1.06, that's A53, it's at 15 dB SNR and about 3.2, maybe, one some odd bits per second per hertz. But ATSC 3 is all the red dots, okay? And what you can immediately see is that there's a red cross down at -6 dB, okay? All the way up to a red square at the top there at maybe 32, 33 dB SNR, operating at over 10 bits per second per hertz. So you can see that, for a 6 megahertz channel, well, the signal bandwidth is 5.83. So at around 10, that's around 57 megabits per second payload there. That's possible. But to get there on that red square, that's 4096 QAM. 4096 QAM. I don't ever see that happening with over-the-air broadcast, because in order to get there, you need 33 dB SNR, which is not practical. But for a cable head end or dedicated cable links or something like that to some cable distributors, that might be an option to get the high payloads. But in the middle are all these options. You have the circles and triangles and X's and pluses and all these different operating points that are possible to choose for broadcasters, so they can fine-tune their services. of course, when they're thinking about it, I would choose a robust pipe for being low capacity down at the bottom. So there is your automotive services or your mobile services operating on cell phones. And for the high capacity stuff that are less robust, it's up on the left-hand side there. Okay, as an example of putting two things together, here's what I've provided. So we have one station that is providing two pipes. And this example here was courtesy of Pearl TV in Phoenix. And we used the Unimos and Univision station there, KFPH, I believe. And the PLP0 is dedicated for mobile service. And at the bottom of that column, you can see the bit rate is 3 megabits per second, and it operates at around 5 dB. And to the column on the right, the PLP1, which is labeled stationary, here you can see it here in the mouse here. This one's stationary. It operates at 18 megabits per second, and it requires about 17, just a little bit more than ATSC 1.0. So we have the ability to split services up. I had the opportunity to take a drive. That's me in the times of COVID here. And this is in Phoenix with that mobile service pipe, and here is the highway speeds coming around. And there's a gap here because there's a tunnel. We did have reception within the tunnel, but of course ducting was occurring to that RF reception. But you can see green just about everywhere except for a diffraction zone. The tower's on top of South Mountain, for those of you who know Phoenix. And South Mountain has a little peak coming out here, so there's a little diffraction where it got low. But at highway speeds of 75 miles per hour in downtown Phoenix, which is not New York, I admit, but there are some high buildings. In downtown, we have solid reception with this mobile pipe. Very encouraging, very compelling. With that same configuration on the last slide, I went to Santa Barbara, and the same situation occurred. This is some diffraction. There's a big mountain here in Santa Barbara, and everywhere else it was solid reception. It went out over 20 miles from the transmitter. So very good reception there. But not even in America was this tried. We have ATSC-3 transmission in Korea, South Korea. And they were able to take a test drive at the Olympics some years ago. I think it's 2018. And they were able to put this antenna on a bus, I can see here. And as they were shuttling people around the to and from the Olympic park there, they were able to record where reception was solid. And you can see everywhere they went, they had good reception in this blue. So we're moving away from this ATSC 1.0 phase where nothing works in mobile to everything works in mobile. We just have to set the pipe up correctly in order to get there. Here's what I was talking about, layered division multiplexing, LDM. It's a new transmission scheme, and it was first described to us by Yi-and Wu, if you know him. Think of a double-decker bus in London. And it's basically, we're going to have a spectrum here at the bottom, and we're going to put a layer on top of that. And we can even put a layer even on top of that. We could have a triple-decker bus. And what this basically does is this upper layer is your very robust core layer. This can be like QPSK or 16 quad. And the lower layers are a higher modulation order, like 256 QAM, 64 QAM, 1024, whatever you want. And it ends up looking like on the graph on the top right. So you can see a QPSK base structure on top of 64 QAM here. And for ATSC-3, we used non-uniform constellations to get our efficiency improved with the low density parity check FEC. So that combination of modulations looked like this. This is basically basically QPSK on top of 64 qualm, I think. No, it might be 286. 286 qualm might be. Okay. But the whole concept here is we layer it in superposition of path. And it basically adds the ability for future extensions to be added later with full backward compatibility. I mean, if you wanted to try something out quick, you can add another future extension layer here in green, and your upper layers will stay as they were. So it's a unique way to combine signals. Since this ATSC3 is OFDM based, single frequency networks become easier to assemble. OFDM is a power add structure instead of an echo cancel consideration for ATSC1. So with power add, in this deep indoor penetration here, if you have 3 towers focusing their emission into the circle, in toward the market, you have more power coming into buildings and deep underground parking structures or whatever to help out receivers with more signal strength. And since it's power add, devices have a better odds to decode what they see. So I'm coming basically to the end of the physical layer here, but basically I want to show that the bootstrap, the starting point here, will signal when is the next frame for you for this demodulator. If we are focused on ATSC3, and that's basically this data structure here, we can indicate to demodulators, wait 500 milliseconds. Wait until this time here to begin picking up the data that's for you. Because in the middle, the broadcaster wants to send something totally different. And that can be the next thing on the horizon. Or it could be ATSC 3.1, or it could be ATSC 4, or it could be whatever they want, some whiz-bang thing that they want to try out. It's entirely possible to keep ATSC 3 going as normal and still have the ability to experiment and play. And playing is the best way I know how for people to learn. Just here it is, have fun. Okay, moving up the stack now. Here is the protocol that we have, and the first thing I want to point out is that we have broadcast on the left and broadband on the right. And you'll notice starting layers here we have broadband or broadcast with ATSC 3.0 and basically an Ethernet connection on the right. And both of them are IP packets. So we have an IP backbone on this. The broadcast is UDP and broadband is TCP. For broadcast, we have 2 separate encapsulations. Root, we call this root, which is basically flute. If you're familiar with flute, that's the RFC 6276, 6932 for, I'm losing it. One of the numbers. It's a flute protocol, which is basically adopted for real time. Okay, so we're sending files with real-time attributes and modifying the protocol a little bit to come up with root. And then for those familiar with MPEG, there's the MMT protocol, which is for basically has always been dedicated for live linear signals, but it does have a GFD mode for non-real time, but I think it's highly specialized for live signal delivery, and it has the ability to ID packets as they go throughout their layers here. So we have the ability for broadcasters to choose which encapsulation they'd like. A very popular choice is root because it allows non-real-time delivery of files, and that could be data, whatever data you want. Applications or software delivery to different client devices, whatever it is. And it's popular because it melds nice with the broadband connection due to its dash segmentation use. So dash spans both broadcast and broadband here, and using root allows an easy delivery with one protocol going to a dash player. I'll note that we're all probably familiar with online dash playing. It's what Netflix and Hulu use. But perhaps you've seen the buffering and the circle going around, buffering. And that's not desirable for live linear. So this has been, it does say dash player, but basically it's modified dash player to deal with very fast processing and getting to the live point very quickly. So upon acquisition, you're right at the live point and players start from there. And on top of all this presentation is in applications. We have a runtime environment. It's HTML5 based. I'll get to that in a minute or two. But it allows a broadcaster to deliver an app, which allows interactivity. And I'll get to more of that in a second. But basically, broadcast is an IP transport. It's brand new. It's the only one. ATSC-3 is the only IP-based transport for the broadcast. They have segmented streaming delivery and real-time and non-real-time delivery. And this graphic on the bottom left here is my way of saying we're trying to hook up the gears, as it were, between the internet and broadcast. We're putting a transmission in to hook the two together. Again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. This is just ISO-BMF files. You guys probably already know this. So, what does this all mean? Well, broadcasting no longer is an independent silo. So we can evolve, we being broadcasters, can evolve with the speed of the internet and compete with online content. And it is a broadcast and broadband peer delivery mechanism, which allows the new type of hybrid services and seamlessly incorporate niche content. So if a broadcaster has coverage of the high school football game, if users are interested in players and they say, oh, how many yards has this player gone this game, or what is his current stats for this year or whatnot, that can be delivered by a broadcaster if he so chooses. And the ability to do that is engaging the consumer even further. And like I was trying to say earlier, the new business models, dream away. With an IP-based protocol, you can interface with more and more customers and more and more online content providers, and sky's the limit. I encourage people to do. I don't want to dive too far down into this, but basically I wanted to introduce what root is, the real-time object delivery of unidirectional transport. It's flute, like I said, which might, if you know it, it has an asynchronous layered coding channel. And it's basically delivery of files, but we've modified it to be on time and have a time segment there to indicate play out. Key features are a single transport protocol for live linear TV and non-real time. Plays out the segments, which is a media delivery event. They say MDE mode. Flexible packetization. You can choose segment lengths from 2 seconds all the way up to 8, but segment length does impact channel change time. And there's extended FDT for other stuff you want to do. And it's similar to, the root protocol is similar to the 3GPP NBMS download delivery, if you're familiar with that. But it does have some very specifics for ATSC-3 for time. The other half of broadcast protocol is MMT, which includes the media processing unit, and that's based entirely on MPEG Part 1, 23008-1. And it has this MPUF brand, the MMPU box, having a global unique identifier. We've had the single media track be allowed, and the sample itself must be in decoding order, and some optional hint tracks to support media aware packetization and whatnot. A lot of this might trigger some minds as to being familiar with this, but it's another way to deliver linear TV. The root protocol is linear TV plus the non-real time, but for ATSC3, the MMT is constrained to linear TV only. So what does this look like in an eye chart? The root protocol is on the left, and the MMT protocol is on the right. Anybody see a difference? Very little, right? The starting point is basically on the left-hand side of each one. It's this purple, or pink, I guess. We have an L1 signaling in the physical layer, like I said. And we have link layer signaling starting off, which points to a SLT. They say low layer signaling here, low level signaling, but it's basically the starting point for service discovery, which is a service list table pointing to service signaling layer, which points to the data of each object. And that's for root, and it looks pretty similar for MMT. It points to an LLS, which contains an SLT, which points to the SLS, which gives to sequence of MPUs. Same kind of thing. Very similar. Security. This is extremely important. It allows content providers to get paid. It's the easiest way for me to describe it. Security allows broadcasters to encrypt their services and sign their services. So basically we can sign the tables for demodulators to say, okay, this checks out. I know this is a valid broadcaster. I know the services that I find in here I can present. If a broadcaster wants to go further and say, here is a free channel of HD content, have fun, but on certain other contents, a broadcaster can encrypt them. And the user devices, upon seeing this encryption, will ask for a key to decrypt. And that asking for a key could allow a broadcaster to have a video on demand kind of service. So with this security, content providers basically have the ability to protect what they have done. It allows broadcasters to be a valid distributor of that content and another avenue for them. And it's highly valued by a lot of the networks. Like I said, it has a digital rights management, and a key thing here is that it's based on the common encryption of counter and CBC modes. For those of you who know, CBCS, which is a which is CBC but slightly reduced, CBCS, that's popular. It comes from Apple. Excuse me. And the industry is becoming a real big fan of that CBCS mode. And the ATSC does know about this, so we're considering that in next steps to include CBCS mode. But with the security, content providers have a peace of mind, and so we can enable new business models. There's this word here, freemium. Basically, a user could register to watch content on the free, which is possible, and then get into the extended content later on if they so choose. So it allows a whole new idea for business models. And if a subscription-based option is what a broadcaster wants to do, they can pay for a dashboard cam kind of video on racing events, or specific camera angles, if you will, that kind of thing. Okay, video. First up, it's basically allowing high dynamic range, and that's the picture with all the deep, rich colors here. We have a wider color gamut. I think it's BT 2020 is being used, and the high dynamic range capability. We have Dolby's 2094-10. and we have HLG and PQ options. So you can see the difference of standard contrast to high dynamic range. For video, we have allowed HEVC up to 4K, or I say 4K, but it's 3840 by 2160. We have spatial scalability, SHVC, to allow the 4K and the 4K rendition from an HD rendition, if you will. The high frame rates. This is big with sports. 120 frame per second video looks great, especially with sports. And we have temporal sublayering with this, plus optimization for both SFR and high frame rate pictures to deliver that high frame rate. So for client devices that support 120 frames per second, they can take advantage of this, but those who only do 60, for example, can take up the temporal filtering aspect of it, where they only pick up every other frame. So we've enabled that. High dynamic range, I already stated this, PQ, HLG, and some metadata. And the wider color gamut. Oh, sorry, it's BT2100. I knew I was screwed something up. So it's BT2100. And the YCBCR non-constant luminance, and the ICTCP constant luminance for PQ, and a full range coding for PQ, along with the SLHDR1 there to render HDR. For audio, be prepared to be blasted like Bart there, off to the right. AC4 Dolby Audio. And Marty, I can give a copy of these slides to you after this I'm done, so don't worry about it. You can forward on to Simpy. Basically, this is allowing complete presentations at 384 kilobits per second. So it's a object-based codec, which allows the renderer to have the feel of objects moving around you, or the ability to hear things around the room, only with 2 speakers, or a soundbar, or with 5.1 audio or 7.1.4. 7.1.4 options as well. So a little bit more. We've actually enabled 2 audio systems. We have MPEG-H and Dolby AC4. But for North America, we've constrained it to be Dolby AC4. And Korea, who uses ATSC-3, they've chosen MPEG-H. But we do support, the standard itself supports both audios. Dialogue enhancement. This is what blows people out of the doors with, just wow enhancement of audio. It's very good. It's scoring very high in consumer surveys. Basically, some people say they don't need captions when they hear this. I'm not going to go that far myself, but the ability to hear voice above the background is amazing. And it really is compelling evidence for consumers to say that's amazing. That's really something I like. User selectable audio tracks. This is nothing new. But, we're used to having English and Spanish and French and all the other different options there. But we now have even more ability to say, okay, these tracks can be both English, but during a football game, you can have announcers from home and away teams be supplied. And so those watching the football game can hear the game announcers from their favorite team. So it's adding more tracks. And video descriptive services and whatnot. So it's expanding the ability. Immersive sound is this object-based codec sensation of sounds coming around you. And works with headphones, like I was saying, other speaker configurations. Dynamic range control. This is something that is interesting. In ATSC 1.0, I think the default is standard range. And it's only because people got used to it. Having dynamic range, or a wider range of audio, was to some people sounding a little bit weird. So the ability to control the dynamic range now is an included feature. So people can choose what feels best or hears best to them. So that's included. Okay, on to applications here. I'm trying to watch the time. But basically, ATSC-1 had burned-in stats, and the broadcaster was in control. For ATSC-3, we have a whole new interactive environment, like a runtime environment, which is HTML5 based, where a broadcaster can overlay graphics, and it's basically using the W3C commands. We have hybrid delivery of merging broadcast and internet, dynamic ad insertion, where users can engage and say these are the areas of interest that I like, travel, food, whatever it is. And that curtails ad selection. Interactivity, voting as an example. The voice, could pop up a little screen, choose your favorite singer, that kind of thing. And it's synchronized with second screen applications. So if you have a cell phone, we have a standard to say, okay, the TV can signal or send controls out to that cell phone to vote from there if you like. And audience measurement capabilities. So the difference here is all HTML5 based, and you can see an overlay of more graphics. Where this example is where the cars are, where their standings and whatnot, and people can interface with that. So the interactivity itself describes the conceptual application. Okay, so we build a sandbox where broadcasters can build their own app and deliver it. It uses the W3C user agent, so the digital web designers today can just get plugging right away into ATSC-3. It's HTML5 based and uses JavaScript and CSS, languages they already know. It supports seamless and secure delivery of interactive content. So for enhanced services of more in-depth football coverage or more in-depth information from a football player, for example, can be searched on a broadcaster app. And it provides a separate unique context. So each broadcaster can have their own application. But currently there's a framework that's available, so users get used to a common look and feel of ATSC-3 apps. What I mean by that is like, in the bottom right-hand corner, there could be a bug that pops up and says, okay, for more information, you can click here, and it goes away. That kind of common feel of it, that's coming out. And it defines a WebSocket API to manage receiver features. So these APIs are like asking a TV or our device, how much memory is available? Are you connected to the internet? Stuff like that. So it allows the app to interact and pick up some key things. But it's based on standard web technologies, and it works in any browser. We're not modifying any browser at all. This is all W3C based. So it applies to more applications. Another example of this application would be if you're watching the History Channel, and I think this is a pawn shop here, Las Vegas Pawns or something, I forget. Anyways, the app can say, okay, here is what they're showing. It's a bicycle, and they also have these other shirts for sale, and the customer or the users can engage with this to shop what they see online and what they see over the air. So it allows better consumer engagement. Now for emergency alerting and emergency services. On the left, you can see the authorities that are all that broadcasters are regulated by. We have the state agencies, National Weather Service, etc., etc. They're all supplying the input CAT messages into the broadcaster. And with ATSC 3.0, now a broadcaster can send even more information, like maps, or here is an alert for Amber, or the snow days or whatever they want, and clients or user devices can signal it's like, no, I'm not interested in Amber Alerts or whatnot, but tell me if a tornado is coming. I want to know about that. So it allows users to curtail the alerts that they get while still having a broadcaster meet their requirements and send alerts to devices. Furthermore, alerts can have codes on them, and those codes could be like zip codes. So while they broadcast an alert, it could carry with it, oh, this tornado is really hitting zip codes ABC. And devices located in those areas would then be alerted. So an example of that, we deliver rich media, like I was saying, maps, and we can geo-target devices here. So I think this example is looking at Washington, D.C., but just another example here. So accessibility. This is key to my company, Sony. The ability to provide robust audio, closed caption transmission, even when picture fails, is really, really key to reach everyone. And the improved audio intelligibility for hearing impaired, that's a big key. And new features coming along with IMSC1 captions is better. And the continued support for video descriptive services. So we're expanding the support of accessibility with ATSC-3 along with the emergency alerts. So we're trying to engage everyone in a market, or at least enable the broadcasters to engage everyone. So, to infinity and beyond, as Buzz Lightyear is going on there. The recommended practices for the standards have been written. They're available now. You can go to the ATSC website, atsc.org, and there's a pull-down menu there for ATSC-3 recommended practices. They really have some good information for how to put things together. And they do get the mind thinking of what can I do with it. So business goals and use cases, people can start to curtail and customize their options that are available for ATSC-3. It's a good read here for recommended practice. There are plug fests that continue to go and test new things out. All this feedback hones and improves the standards. We're still deploying services. We're pretty well out there. I think we're up to maybe 40 markets now where ATSC-3 is available. I got a graphic on the next slide, I think. But the more it gets used, the more feedback comes in, and that even gets us even better for improving the standards. So if you guys start to look at it and find some questions, let me know. Always willing to improve the standard or help us out in understanding. To look forward and beyond where we're at, we have some planning teams. There's planning team 4, 5, and 6, but basically it's advanced video technologies or any future technology coming in, be it video or audio, whatever it is. That would be planning team 4. What's the next thing coming? We have some dedication to automotive applications. Like I showed that PLP0 for mobile. What kind of applications apply to automotive? Is it infotainment? Could it be software updates? Is it fleet management? Is it insurance kind of support? Or tracking of vehicles could help? Mileage helping out. This car has now driven 5,000 miles. Time for an oil change. That kind of. What's possible? It's green. And then there's Planning Team 6, which is basically outreach across the world to inform people of what's possible with ATSC-3. Of course, they're in control. They choose what they want to do, but educating people about ATSC 3.0, letting people know what's available is what that planning team doing. Society of Broadcast Engineers has a certification exam that is now in the works. I think it's been released. It says exam development, but I now think it's available. So for station engineers who want to get up to speed and be certified on ATSC3, there is an exam out now that can help. And the revision process, striking the right balance between evolution and stability. So it's always the point of, what's this new video codec, VVC, for example. Is that possible to start, being broadcast? Should we go that route? Do we take that step? Versus stability of, okay, we've settled on HEVC for now. Should that be used for a little bit of time until we take the next step? But the standards today are looking to at least include the option for evolution, have the ability for technology to evolve and keep relevant. That's what ATSC3 does. So here's where ATSC3 stands today. Look at the orange or the yellow. Those are the counties that have ATSC3 available right now. The light blue is where people are preparing. They're getting equipment in, they're installing it, they're getting ready. And the dark blue is that, yes, we have plans to do it. And the way this is rolling out, this map is available at that URL there in a minute, but the way this is rolling out is basically broadcasters are starting to work together. So broadcasters in our market, they'll meet and they'll say ATSC3 looks pretty compelling, I'd like to try it, and if there's more than two, then you've got the possibility to say, okay, I'll carry the existing 1.0 transmission, and you feed me your ATSC 1.0 content, which is probably the same thing. And then the other broadcaster would say, okay, I'm going to set up ATSC 3.0, and I'll transmit it into the market. So they can start to work together and evolve. I know that's contrary to decades of operation, but what we're seeing across this nation here is that the broadcasters do see the potential of ATSC3, and they are willing to take that step and work together to roll it out. And ATSC 3.0 basically is a voluntary standard. You don't have to do it. The FCC has made it voluntary. So you don't have to do it, but what we're seeing is that many broadcasters want to do it. The ability to send data, the ability to rent out their spectrum, the ability to support mobile, to support automotive, to have new business models, to keep up with the internet, to keep pace with technology, to roll out and have new ideas and being able to try things out. That's really compelling to a lot of them, and you're seeing the map here of where they want to start. So this map is only going to get filled in as time rolls by, I believe. We've had commitments from Pearl TV and Sinclair. They're all in the trade news. TV technology, for example. You can see those trade press trade press has sections dedicated to Next Gen TV. The Next Gen TV wording is basically the public-facing name for ATSC 3.0. So if you want to do some online searches there, you can search either for ATSC 3 or Next Gen TV. You should get to the same kind of idea of ATSC 3. Now with that, I'll stop talking and open it up for questions.
I've got one, Luke. What about television manufacturers supporting the tuning set? What's out there now? What's coming?
Right, excellent question. So LG, Samsung, and Sony have TV sets available. Samsung has stated that their 8K line is all next-gen TV ready. And I say ready, but I think it really means it can find the service if it's available in the market. So if you buy the TV, you're good to go. LG also has sets available. It might be their high-end line of 4K OLEDs, but I'm not sure. I know they have it available, and it's in their 4K OLEDs. And they also have a software update that came out last summer, so I think if you buy one of those, you're good to go. Sony also has the X900H TV that came out last year, and we also have our XR series of TVs that support next-gen TV, and the XR series are the 2021 models. So I have to be a little careful. It's the 2020 X900 TV from Sony, and the XR series from 2021 would do the next-gen TV.
What about external tuners?
So, yeah, great question. There's a USB dongle kind of solution that's available. I'm aware of Airwaves having a dongle solution. Is it High-Sil? No, it's there's an HD Home Run unit. I think it's from Silicon Dust. That's like a set-top box solution that's available. And I think a Bit Router has a Zapper box. If you look for that name, Zapper box, Google that, you'll get to their solution. But there are other options out there than buying a new TV.
Any other questions for Luke? Well, Luke, thank you very much. It was a very in-depth look. I realize you could probably make a session out of each one of those slides. It's boggled my mind a little bit.
Dare to dream, dream on it or sleep on it. If you have any questions, let me know. You have my email. If any one of you wants to have something, a thought occurs to you later on next week or something, I should have thought that. Let me know. I'm always available by email.
That's great. And if you can send us the slides, it'd be good to have them.
Absolutely.
And we'll get this on our website very shortly for on demand, probably within a couple of days. Bob Lamb over here takes care of that. Our webmaster does a very fine job. So again, I want to thank you all for coming and hope you can make next month's meeting April 21st. And that's Mark Shubin with Fandom of the Opera, which is always a good presentation. And May 19th, we're Kyle Kuhn from Telex Tektronix combined now on SDI to IP. And he always does a great job. So again, thanks again for coming, and we'll see you next month.